Team Baldwin, and just to introduce ourselves, I'm Tam.
I'm Elizabeth.
I'm Draco Chen.
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Ashley.
Cool. And so to get started, the first thing we're gonna be touching on is our strategy. So we went with the niche differentiator strategy, which focuses upon the high tech segment of the market. So the competitive advantage that really comes out of this strategy is distinguishing products with excellent design. And so what that means is always creating products that are being updated to fit the niche of the market, as well as creating products that have extremely high awareness and easy accessibility for customers. And so really in this strategy, our products kind of keep pace in the market. So they're, again, always being updated, and we're always offering improved size and performance. Products under this strategy will be priced at a premium. So our capacity is going to be expanded as our higher demand is generated as well. And I'm going to pass it off to Jennifer to go over the summaries for our Capsim rounds.
Focusing on our decisions for R&D, when we look at performance, we aimed at high tech for Baker and then switched to low tech after the first round. As a result, our product ended up between ideal positions for most of the rounds. For Bold, we focused on performance and we had a high result for that, but it ended up far outside ideal positions for both high tech and low tech. For our products Bid and Buzz, we remained close to high tech with a small difference between them so that they didn't end up being exactly the same product. Meanwhile, the companies Airy and Andrews had their first products be low tech, and then they remained nearly constant in R&D over the course of the simulation, improving at the 6th round, so that by the last round, we ended up at the same position. Next, we have size. It was mostly the same story for size, except that Bold was actually in a good position for size. The only problem was that because it had such a high performance, it was still outside of the ideal position and wasn't savable. Next, we have marketing. We spent the max amount in the first round, and our overspending increased our net loss. Our spending reached the lowest point in the 4th round when we tried to reach only half the market share we needed. Afterwards, we increased our spending. Meanwhile, Airy was able to decrease their spending in the later rounds so that they saved more money. Next, we have awareness and accessibility. We started out with a large gap between our awareness and accessibility scores, with awareness much higher. Meanwhile, Airy reached 100 in both awareness and accessibility halfway through, while we gradually increased over time. In later rounds, we were the only company not at 100% for both awareness and accessibility. And next we have production.
Now we will look at the summaries of our production decisions through rounds 1 through 8, starting with the order size. We forecasted our order by analyzing segment demand and our market segment. We used our current market share to calculate orders for the following year. In round 1, we made the mistake of over forecasting Baker, which led us to not make as many sales as we predicted and put us in a very tight situation. Round 3, we decided Tire Bowl because that product was no longer viable. And in round 3, we introduced the new product Bid, and in round 5, the new product Buzz. For capacity changes, in the first round, we decided to decrease Baker's capacity by 150 and increase Bold's. Because of our lack of funds, we weren't really able to increase capacity. We didn't need to make many improvements because our orders didn't require it, which is why after the first couple rounds of the newer products, we didn't make any improvements. Most of our automation improvements were made in the first round. Once again, due to our lack of cash, we didn't have money to invest in plant improvements, so you can see how we had little improvement in automation for the new products Bid and Buzz.
For finance, we had a large dip in net cash from operations at the first round, and then we had a mirroring peak when we used up the inventory that we had left over in the second round. Our net cash from operations dipped after that, and it finally went up at around the 6th round, when we finally became profitable by about $1,000 after hovering at below zero for most of the simulation. Our stock price hovered around $1 for most of the rounds, and we finally made it to $11 by the end. Meanwhile, Aries' stock price was at $126 because starting from the 6th round, they had made huge profits.
Because of our niche differentiator strategy, we wanted to focus in investing in scientist recruitment and retention to decrease the time it would take our new products to be released. We focused on that for most of our investment, but once again had to stop making investments after round 5 because of our lack of cash. We can see in the graph that demonstrates how we spent the most money on scientists in the beginning and in the following rounds, and then we see the eventual decrease and decline in our total investments in human resources. For total quality management, we only actually made investments in rounds 4 and 5, which is the first round where TQM becomes available, and then the following round. After the first round of TQM, we had noticed that many of our competitors weren't investing in the UNEP Green program. Actually, none of our competitors invested at all in that program. So we took the opportunity to invest heavily there because that specific TQM helps gain market share. So we use that to try and gain an advantage over our competitors.
And now to go over our purpose, goals, and objectives with our strategy. So to begin, the purpose was, again, focused on targeting the high-tech segment and to really keep these products in the pace with the market, which means essentially offering improved size and performance. Using the niche differentiation strategy, the goal was to have distinguishing products that fit the needs of consumers in the high-tech segment. So the competitive advantage here with these goals is to target high awareness, easy accessibility, and very updated and new designs consistently. And again, as higher demand generated, so would our capacity for these products. Specifically for our objectives, for research and development, we wanted to focus on producing multiple product lines, and we wanted to start out with a minimum of 2, and we had gone over that. And we also wanted to match these high-tech expectations that relayed age, reliability, and performance of, again, what the high-tech segment wanted. For marketing, we focused on a premium rate and focused a majority of our finances on the promotion and sales of these products. For production specifically, we wanted to avoid second shifts as much as possible, but also allow the capacity to grow with the generated demand. With finances, our focus was to use our investments primarily through stock issues and cash from operations, but also supplementing them with bond offerings as needed. However, as we previously discussed with our tight financial situation, not all of these objectives were hit as well as we wanted to. And now I will pass it off to Draco to go over assumptions, risks, and lessons learned.
Since our business strategy is niche differentiator, we have the assumption that high performance always leads to high demand. In round 1, our first product, Baker, had the highest specification in the market. 2 of our major competitors were still developing new products until next year, and the current product specifications are far below our Baker, meaning that we can assume that Baker would dominate the high-tech market in round 1. Without assumption, we made the following decision. Next. We invested aggressively in promotion and sales with a total of $6,000. So we anticipated that we would increase the market share by 8%. We also wanted to make more contribution margin, so we priced Baker at $43, hoping that we would get 10% increase on the margin. We finalized our data analysis and with a forecast and production amount of over 1,200 units. However, there were many risks in this decision, and I'm going to show you the risk and risk management with this. Before we talk about the risk management, we always start from identifying the risk. First, the age for Baker was too old. It was 2.1 years comparing with 0-year expectation from our high-tech customers. Because we priced Baker too high, we did not have any market in the low-tech market. And we narrowed down our sales channel to just the high-tech market. And also the last thing we ignored was that the development date for Baker only finished in December, meaning we didn't have the whole year to sell this product. And what we did to reduce the risk, we did nothing. we were planning to sell the product in order to cover the operation cost, and that comes with a consequence. Next, we had over 600 units inventory left, resulting in more than $1,200 emergency loan, and our market share shrunk by 5.5%. We made a big mistake at the beginning, but we also learned a lot from this mistake we made. So Ashley is going to share her insights of what we learned from this mistake.
So with such a high forecast, it meant we needed to properly position our product to sell the amount that we forecasted. But again, the age of our product was too old. As Draco mentioned in the last slide, the expected age was 0, and yet our product's age was only at 2 years. Our product was also set to sell in December, which is too late, so we were unable to gain a competitive advantage early on to acquire market share. It's also important to keep in mind that the total market size for the high-tech market was 2,592, and yet we inaccurately forecasted we'd sell 1,287, which meant that we were predicting to grab about half of the market share, which is difficult with 5 other competitors. On the next slide, I'll summarize what we learned. So sales forecasting is one of the most important decisions marketing makes. Production and finance heavily rely on the sales forecast, so developing an accurate forecast is very important. Forecasting a number too high will lead to an inaccurate order amount, which leads to high inventory. And high inventory buildup is very expensive and can definitely force us to take out an emergency loan, which we learned is very hard to come back from and can definitely offset our strategy. So if we do a high sales forecast, we should make sure our product is positioned properly so it can meet the segment's buying criteria. We should also make sure that the forecast is achievable by taking into consideration the total market size and the demand growth rate. And I'll pass it back to Draco, who will talk more about lessons learned.
Another important lesson we learned besides marketing was the production. We should invest in production line in order to drive down the variable cost. Ever since we repositioned Baker from high-tech market to the low-tech market, we dropped the price from $43 to $30. Because low-tech market is a very price-sensitive market. Customer prefers products with low price, and our competitor noticed the change of our price drop. They reacted in the same way. They also reduced their price in order to be competitive in this market. However, Baker was not sustainable in this price war because we did not have investment on our production. Let me explain this to you by comparing the price automation and cost between Baker and Yeat, one of our major competitors. Looking at the first chart, price, you notice that we could not lower the price below about $28, while Yeat could set the price at $20. That was a huge advantage, and that was because on the second chart, they have higher automation than us, because we don't have any fund to invest in production, we stop our automation at level 5, while Yeat can continue to improve their automation and max out. The benefit of higher automation comes with cheaper costs on material and labor. So looking down 2 charts below, even though we have the same material cost around 8, our labor cost was ridiculously higher than Yeat. So by making one product, we have to pay more than Yeat, and we have less contribution margin. From this lesson, we learned that if we're selling Baker at price $30 with a 20% margin, and we invested in cheaper material costs and labor costs, then we will be able to sell at $30, but with a higher contribution margin, or we can sell at a lower price but keep the same contribution margin. Either way, we have huge advantage because we're setting up a barrier of entry for potential competitors. We're basically setting up increasing the fixed cost for this market. If newcomers want to come to this market, they have to pay a really expensive fixed cost. Otherwise, they won't be able to compete with us at the same price. And that's the lesson we learned in the production line. Next.
Thank you so much for listening, and that is the presentation from Baldwin.